Okay. Also with us for today's conversation is Soji Eneade. He's the Director General of the Citizenship and Leadership Training Center, Jos, in Plateau State. Mr. Eneade, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
And via Zoom, we would like to welcome two of our regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. On screen, you see Professor Oluremi Shonaya, an educationist, writer, and of course, formerly a professor of French language and applied linguistics at Obafemi Awolowo University. She was a presidential candidate of Kowa Party in the 2015 elections and now actively involved with several political initiatives. Professor Shonaya, I'd like to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me.
And also with us via Zoom, another regular, Professor Muhammad Kabir Issa, Professor of Governance in the Department of Local Government and Development Studies, Faculty of Administration at Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Professor Issa, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Okay. All right, lady and gentlemen, it's indeed nice to have you with us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. We have a very important topic, to, of course, interrogate this morning. Nigeria is a country with a checkered political history, and they're looking at the political trajectory of the nation from independence. Everybody agrees that the major issue in contention in the polity is that of leadership. And that, of course, is the reason why we brought that topic to the fore this morning. Let's first of all begin with Dr. Felix Osamoje to find out from him, what is the concept of leadership? What does leadership entail?
Like we've seen in the introductory video, leadership is about providing direction for a group of people. It could be a company, it could be a country. Leadership is the one that provides the roadmap for where a group of people want to be, where they hope to be in the future. So in other words, the main focus of a leader should be providing shared vision, a vision of tomorrow, a vision of improving the life of the people. Again, in the introductory video, we saw that leadership is about the people. In other words, I'll put it this way, that followership is what gives meaning to leadership. So if you take away followership, then leadership really has no meaning. Because followership and leadership, they are like two sides of a coin. If you take one side of the coin off the coin, it's no longer a coin, it's a counterfeit. You can't use it. So that's what leadership is. When you remove the followership side of leadership, leadership becomes meaningless. And that's why everything a leader does must be to harness the potential of the people so that at the end they can see a brighter future for themselves and then be able to then willingly follow the leader. Because a leader must have followers. Otherwise, it's not a leader.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Osamoje, for your opening comments. Let's bring in now the DG of the Citizenship and Leadership Training Center in Jos. Let's have your understanding of what leadership is and how critical that idea is for the success of any organization or society.
Thank you very much. Latching on what Doctor said, my own perspective is a tripartite arrangement: citizenship, leadership, and good governance. It's a tripartite arrangement. And there should be a bond, a strong bond amongst the three concepts: citizenship, leadership, and good governance. If there's a weak link between any of the three concepts, then the end result will not be good. He has said it, that followership or citizenship and leadership are two sides of a coin. But the third leg of it is good governance. So there's a strong link between citizenship, leadership, and good governance. If there's a shortfall or a weakness in the bond amongst the three, then the end result will not be good.
Kyria, I would like Soji and Ade to elaborate on this further. You talk about the tripartite concept of leadership, and some would wonder whether good governance is an idea of its own, or rather an interaction between the leadership and the citizenship that will produce good governance.
It's a link. It's like a chain. It's like a cycle, vicious cycle. Because leadership will emerge from the followership, of course. The quality of followership, the quality of citizenship will determine the quality of leadership. And the quality of leadership will determine the quality of governance we're expecting. So there's a link, between the three. That is my own perception of it.
Okay, Dr. Sam Ikoku, you have to come in here. What is your own perspective as to the concept of leadership?
Well, thank you for the question. So many people look at leadership from the titular or the acquired perspective. I would like to look at it from a transactional perspective. A leader has just one job. That's to share the reality with those with whom he or she interact. At the end of the day, the leader's job is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant. Whether you say you are a value-based leader, whether you say you're a servant leader, whether you say you are a purpose-driven leader, the critical thing is the answer to one simple question: are you effective? And if you look at leadership also, you'll find that it can happen at any level of any organization. Because, like Warren Buffett says, when the leader's job is done, the people say, we did it ourselves. My personal definition of leadership is effectiveness at the point of main effort, which means you can have leaders at all levels in all organizations. I do agree that at this time we're talking about political leadership, but we must understand what leadership truly is. Visions are no longer enough because they're subjective. A leader shares a vision, yes, but he must work with the people. Some call them followers, some call them team members, and they must develop a roadmap about how to go where they've chosen to go, to know what that future means, what that vision really means. And then everybody has to understand they have a role to play and play that role as diligently as they can. So we have leaders at all levels of all organizations serving different purposes and functions. And what makes leadership stand out is effectiveness at the point of main effort.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Sam Ikoku. Let's join Professor Oluremi Shonaya for her own initial comment on the idea of leadership. And I just would like, Prof, you to take this along with your opening remark, namely that in what is usually referred to as kingdom animalia, where the Homo sapiens, that's us human beings, are the apex of the animal kingdom, we find right from the Homo sapiens down to various forms of animals, the species are in need of and do succumb to leadership. What does that tell us about creation and the importance of leadership?
Thank you very much. I believe that one issue that is central to leadership is the influence for the common good. Influence for the common good. And precisely in bringing in the animal kingdom, you find that leaders emerge. I think a part of the difficulty we have is that we have a group of leaders, and we are used to that because of our tradition, our culture, like our traditional rulers. They do not emerge as leaders necessarily because they have proven themselves in any way at all. Because if the system that brings them up is hereditary, therefore we have attached a lot of importance to the position. And we think that once you occupy that position, then you are deserving of people's, whether it's adulation or loyalty or whatever. However, leadership normally should be tested, you should evolve because of demonstrable competences, demonstrable skills, abilities, and so on. We know how in the private sector they choose leaders. Unfortunately, we have not done that in our political system. It seems as if the issues that we focus upon, which we are experiencing right now in the country about zoning, where you come from, and so on and so forth, those are not really the primary issues we should be focusing on. Rather, the competence, what is the capacity of the person? And has the person the ability to inspire us, both by their words as well as by the personal example of their lives? Because these are the issues that are important for good leadership, so that, as has already been said, people will be able to follow. What is that kind of leader who cannot inspire people? It is a waste, and therefore we see the kind of challenges that we have been having in our country. A leader that demonstrates compassion, that does not think of himself or herself as being in a more privileged position than the followers. A leader that identifies with the followers and says, I will not treat myself differently. What is good for me is good for you also. If you cannot have it, then I cannot have it. We don't have that concept of leadership in Nigeria. What are the moral underpinnings of leadership? I think we have so removed that from public service, public life in general, and we must begin to reintroduce that leadership is not for personal gain, that leadership is for the common good, and that if the people cannot have something, then the leader also should not be able to have it. Good health services, all the leaders running off, to foreign countries for their medical treatment. That is not right. It undermines effective leadership.
All right. Thank you so much, madam. Kingsley, except that we are missing her this time around, in the political terrain, because the core party really made impact, at the time, you were the helm of affairs of that party. Well, thank you indeed. Gentlemen, she has raised a very critical points here, moral underpinnings of leadership, demonstrable skills, that leadership should be tested at some point in time to determine whether we have effective and efficient leadership. All right, at this point, let me bring in Professor Mohammed Kabir, is the Professor of Governance, Department of Local Government and Development Studies, Malibolo University, Zaria. So let's get your own opening comment, on the issue of leadership. What is leadership, and what is your perspective of what this word connotes?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back on Good Morning Nigeria once again. Now, I look at leadership from a power relationship dimension. Leadership inspires followership through the people. I mean, leader is supposed to inspire followership. It's a process of inspiring followership. Now, a leader is a leader because he enjoys certain power base, and that he's a leader on the basis of certain power, and that power guarantees the exercise of authority. Now, so a leader should inspire. He uses his power and authority to inspire. Now, the more the followership, the more the test of legitimacy that a leader enjoys in society. And the lesser the number of followership, then of course it proves or points to the limit or the lowest ebb of legitimacy enjoyed by the leader. So a leader should inspire followership by the people. And how is he supposed to inspire the followership? He can do that by exercising the power and authority embedded in his leadership, by exercising those powers and authority through visionary leadership, through services. And so therefore that leads to the point that a leader is a service provider, is a servant of the people. And this is where the problem is. We have leadership conception that is bereaved of the servitude of the leader to the followership. And so that power and authority misleads the leader into believing that he is the Alpha and Omega. He is the beginning and end of power. No. And that is why in constitutional democracy, we have put in place certain trappings where we will call the leader after a certain period to account. After 4 years of service, we'll invite you to come and render account. If we agree with you, then we renew your mandate. If we don't, we reject your mandate and bring on board a new mandate. So I would like to look at leadership from that political perspective. However, there are certain historical conjectures, because these are theoretical and conceptual approaches. But in reality, there are certain historical conjectures that distort. For example, we have democracy today. However, the practice of democracy and leadership in Nigeria is not what you found elsewhere. For example, the Singaporean example, the Chinese miracle, or for example, the United Arab Emirates example, that we see Nigerians shamelessly flocking to Dubai, going to Singapore, while you have a Nigeria with full of human resources everywhere you go. In fact, in Africa today, out of 10 intellectuals, 6 are Nigerian. We have all the resources. What is lacking is the leadership in Nigeria. And the conception, the value orientation of leadership, which is embedded in our colonial heritage. I'll give an example. In historical archive, the wife of a resident officer noted while traveling from UK to Nigeria in the colonial era, noted that the district officers from UK traveling to Nigeria, going to different colonial regions, were not on speaking terms, as if they were on rivalry. So this cutthroat competition, regional competition, derives its origin. And so it produced the type of leaders that we have. We have leaders, for example, that have been produced in a system where in the pre-colonial era, you have, for example, the Hausa Sarauta system. The Hausas were separate states. The Yorubas were separate states. But under colonialism, we were able to build Hausa people, northern Nigeria. We were able to build Egbe Omo Udua. We were able to build Ndi Union. But we all know that Igbos are Republicans. They're autonomous community. But during colonialism, we were able to build Ndi Igbo Federation. We were able to build Hausa. We were able to build Yoruba Kingdom. However, after independence, the leaders failed to build Nigerian leaders because that inherited competitive tendencies from divide and rule pervade and permeate leadership styles in Nigeria. And this accounts for what we have inherited today in Nigeria.
All right. Professor Muhammad Issa, thank you very much there for your opening salvo. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Well, Madam Professor and gentlemen, that's the other guests here with us. what has gone wrong with leadership in Nigeria? This time we're looking at it holistically. Is it that in conceiving of leadership, there has now been a shift more towards the perks and privileges of leadership? Because leadership, whether in the animal kingdom or among Homo sapiens, does confer some rights and authority and privileges. Have we now shifted more to a focus on perks and privileges rather than on that critical element of leadership being a call to duty or service? Dr. Aisamoje.
I think the problem, like the prof said, is some of the problem is embedded in our culture. People not understanding the true concept of leadership. People looking at leadership, and the problem is on both sides. It's both on the leadership side as well as on the follower side. On the follower side, we always think that when somebody has position authority, or simplified, somebody is in a position and that position confers some level of authority on the person, we assume that the person is a leader. I mean, you can have position, you can have authority, and yet you don't have leadership. You are not a leader. So that's the problem on the follower side. Now, on the leadership side, what we are seeing is what you alluded to, that people are looking at the benefits that come with leadership. They're looking at the perks of that position. They're looking at the amount of influence it gives them over the people, and begin to, like a friend of mine would say, begin to major in the minor. Take the perks that is not the thing and make it the main issue. So I think when you look at that, it becomes a problem because people do not understand that, like Professor Shonaya said earlier, you find in our culture that we have lived with the emirs, we have lived with the Ogbuefis, we have lived with the Obas, who speak and you can't challenge them. You can't ask a question. If they say anything, their word is like law. But the leader is not like that. And so we begin to confuse leadership with some elements of dictatorship, because when you look at how the traditional rulers lead, it tends more towards dictatorship, because leadership and dictatorship are on the extremes of the same spectrum. Now, the leader is supposed to look at, like I said earlier, you look at your followers, look at the people who are following you. What are the potentials they have? You craft a vision, like I said, share. That vision has to be shared. It's not your vision. It's the vision of the people. Where are you leading them to? Is the future brighter based on what you are doing today? Because you say, okay, in 10 years' time, I want my group, whatever group it is you're leading, to be here. And so you take that future plan and begin to create the processes to lead your people there. I've never been to Dubai, but I understood that the leadership of Dubai had a 20, 30, even 50-year plan of what they wanted their country to be. And the leader took that and began to use the resources to build the country to the point where, like you heard, all Nigerians are flocking to Dubai today. What is happening in Dubai is a result of somebody who had a vision for his people and then worked using the resources of the people to improve the condition of the people, if you like, the condition of the country, to the point where we are beginning to go there. And it's the reverse in our own case, where we had the resources, and a past leader of Nigeria said, the problem we have in Nigeria is not the resources, it's how to spend it. Now, you will have a problem with spending the money if you do not have a vision of what you want to spend the money on. So if you create the vision, then you have an idea of what you want to spend the money on, and then you can take those resources and harness them to take your people there. So I see it's a problem on both sides of the leadership and followership. While the followership do not understand properly what the leader should be doing for them, the leadership is looking at their position as, I'm here for myself instead of I'm here to improve the lot of my people.
All right, well taken, Prof. And let's return to Soji Enyede. There are some points raised by Professor Issa a short while ago, which has to do with our cultural orientation. Do you think that our cultural orientation exerts some level of influence in the leadership style of Nigerians who found themselves at power positions? Because first of all, for you to exercise power, you have to have the authority to do that. Are Nigerians who find themselves in authority positions, are they allowing their cultural dispensation, to impact on their leadership style? Because in this country, we've had leaders of different categories. We've had military interregnums. We've had democratic settings. Some failed. We'll be able to sustain that now since the Fourth Republic. Now, if Nigerian leaders are not taking into cognizance the fact that leadership concept means more than they understand, all right, what is the role of followers in this respect? Because I understand that in the past, if you're a leader and you are not having mansions all over the place, your followers will say you're not doing well. If you're not sharing, they'll say you're not doing well. So how has followership impacted on our leadership style?
Thank you very much. I said it in my opening statement. That is, there's a very strong nexus, a very strong bond, or there should be rather, between followership and leadership. I think there's this, is it Kenya or South African adage, Ubuntu, I am because we are.
South Africa.
South Africa. I am because we are. I am there is the leader. We are there is the followership. The leader cannot be without the followership. So the cultural angle of it, as reflected by the prof, is very, very important. Where we're coming from, and Doc said it too, that a cultural, evolution, the Obership, the Emirship tends more towards dictatorship, and we revere the leadership. We expect that, oh yes, they are their semi-gods. Whereas there should be a sort of, we have in Yoruba language, what we call ajumoshe, collective participation. The leadership has its own role, the followership has its own role. And constitutionally, at the end of every year, for 4 years, leadership will call to give account of their stewardship. How well have we been doing that? That is the issue. So we need some reorientation. We need some re-evaluation, self-re-evaluation. Yes, in some countries, there is a mix of it, depending on the type of followership too. Singapore, for example, the first Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, in his book, From the Third to the First World, wrote that, he jailed some of his colleagues who were together in the United Kingdom, who came back home, fought for the independence of Singapore, attained independence, formed government. It shows the kind of leadership, the foundational leadership, transformational leadership, developmental leadership. But the role of the followers, the role of the citizen is very, very important. It's critical. There shouldn't just be a link between citizenship and leadership. There must be a bond that is not easily broken between the two segments of the society. Leadership should be about problem solving, identifying the problems of the society, and creating ideas, visions, utilizing available resources to solve the problems. Right? So the culture of how do I put it now? The culture of worshiping, so to say, of whoever emerges as a leader is there. And we see that, since he's our leader, all our responsibilities must equally go to him. So it's a huge challenge within our society, within Nigeria presently. We need an active electorate. We need an active citizenship that must determine the kind of leadership, they deserve. That is my position for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Soji Eniade. Dr. Sami Koko, let's also have your pitch on this issue on the table right now, whether there is a cultural determination of the tendency for our leaders to focus more on perks and for the followers to also demand those privileges and perks rather than seeing it as a call to duty.
Well, thank you very much. I agree with what all the co-panelists have said, but I just like us to focus on and separate some issues. The issue of perks for leaders has become a challenge because the leaders themselves are not performing. As long as there's no performance, any kind of benefits they get will seem out of place. If one were leading in a country of 180, 200 million people, one could put all of those perks in perspective. The truth is, people are going into office for the perks, yes, but it's because the followers are not holding them accountable as well. If we had formed the habit since independence of holding our leaders accountable, not just making it a passing discussion, I'm sure people will think more critically before they accept leadership positions. The issue of culture should be looked at very carefully. We should not confuse culture with tradition. We have traditional leaders and rulers that have roles to play. That's part of our identity. But when we look at culture as the way things are done around here, we have to understand that culture is not immovable. If we find that we cannot run our country, we must change the culture. Every major index you use, whether it's corruption, whether it's national competitiveness, whether it's science and technology, engineering and maths in education, Nigeria is lagging behind. I have also looked critically and I've seen that the quality of the vision of our leaders have been on a decline for a while. We have strong planning organs in place. We have strong, long, medium-term plans. But execution, implementation has always been the problem. Unless and until we begin to align strategy with people, give our people the resources, the opportunities to implement our strategies, we'll keep having rolling plans that don't work. I was on the Vision 2020 National Competitiveness Thematic Group. I've been on the Vision 20, the Nigeria Project 2050. Beautiful plans, beautiful ideas, beautiful, but it always fails on implementation. So I think it's time to hold our leaders accountable. My view and my opinion to the youth is this. You were youth yesterday, you're growing old today. Stop making excuses about, we could have done this if our leaders did that. Hold leaders accountable. When you're picking people for highest office, yes, people change, people evolve every day. But unfortunately, we can't take the risk. Those we pick as leaders for the highest office must have proven themselves. They must have performed creditably somewhere else. And then to our leaders, all I would say is have a little bit of a conscience and be value-driven. There used to be a time that when leaders were indicted or just even accused of anything, they would resign out of integrity. Today, they sit put and fight back. It's almost become a right, a privilege. And the population, the followers, the youth, whatever you want to call them, are sitting down very extremely docile. Something has to change. The followers have to become the leaders. There's no way around that. We need to measure impact by the results we have. Nigeria has to wake up. Nigeria has to grow up. All the stories about colonial rule and the way they came and so on, yeah, that's history. The facts are clear. We have access to international information. We can see what's happening around the world. Let us take our life into our hands and stop the stories about what the colonial people did. It's time to build a great country. Nothing else needs to be added to that.
Okay,
Thank you. We all speaking. All our guests are actually speaking towards the same direction, And what I can deduce from that is the fact that we lack leadership. We lack especially foundational leadership, and that's why I want to bring in Professor Sanaya here, who has once sought to be a leader in this country, though she couldn't get there because of so many reasons. But, Madam, what is lacking in leadership structure? For instance, there was a time in this country when we passed through military interregnums, and one of the most popular one was during the Diabo era, his soul rest in peace, when there was this drive to reorientate Nigerians. At the point, we believe that actually that move affected all generations of Nigerians in terms of understanding the need to be disciplined in the first place. Now, the question now is, what do we need to do to begin to have leaders with clear conscience, leaders with skills, leaders that are foundational in reasoning, not just for yourself or for your party, but for future generations? How possible is it to reorientate Nigerians, especially those who are seeking positions of authority?
Thank you very much. It's as if you read my mind, actually, because I was just thinking of making the point about the damage that military incursion into governance did to our, whether it's our psyche or our public life in Nigeria. I mean, when the military took over, look at the pre-military leaders that we had in Nigeria. These were people who were well-educated.
Selfless.
Yes, thank you very much for putting that in. Selfless. People who, they fought for something. They fought for our independence and so on. They were driven by the right kinds of zeal and motives and vision for our nation. We're talking about that first generation, I would say the Nahoros, the Tafawa Balewas, the Awolowas, and so on. And then the military came. And I don't think that all of that Idiagbon issue could really have worked and been sustainable because they themselves did not evolve properly as leaders. So you don't come, grab power, and want to force down discipline on down the throats of the people. You yourself, you are not disciplined, basically, in the way in which you acquired the power. So that is one important point to note. Secondly, however, and this is critical, is education. The last speaker was just saying that we have to learn to hold our leaders accountable. Well, you do not have a majority of unschooled, uneducated people, and they will be able to hold the leaders accountable. What education does for you, or what it should do, is to broaden your mind, is to give you that ability to reason things out, to challenge ideas that you come that you confront, that you are confronted with, so that when somebody says, this is the person that you all should go and vote for, an educated person will be able to say, but why? What has he done for me? What has he demonstrated, or whatever? We cannot hold our leaders accountable. And at times I wonder whether there isn't a deliberate attempt to keep Nigerians poor and uneducated, because in that way you can be sure of very docile, sheepish followers. It is when you have, a confident group of people as citizens in a country, exposed to different ideas with the ability to reason and judge issues and weigh matters, that is when you can have a viable country that will be able to hold, the leaders accountable. So I think that, this situation we are in demands that we immediately prioritize education of Nigerians. Over 10 million, people say maybe 13 million plus children roaming the not going to school at all. We're in serious trouble. This is not how things are supposed to be run. All the we have been mentioning, they invested in their people, not them, can have the kind of society.
Looks like Professor Remi Shonaya, looks like your bandwidth is low now, which is why we are having the signal disruption coming from you. We do hope that is restored once we get back to you. Professor Muhammad Issa, let's see how good your own network is. If your bandwidth is okay and you are on the screen right there, Professor Issa, let's look at this from another perspective. It is interesting that we are discussing current leadership or recent leadership challenges that we are having in the country. But again, we can't actually run away from our history. We have, in the entity called Nigeria today, we had empires. There was the Old Oyo Empire. There was the Kanem Bono Empire. You had the Hausa states. You had the Old Benin Empire. And when you say the word empire, that requires a great deal of organization and leadership. And there are some empires whose obas were cursed by their people because of the failure of certain aspects of their leadership style. In the Old Oyo Empire, a point came if a leader wasn't performing well and he was handed a calabash, that meant he should go and commit suicide. And he actually went to commit suicide. So we've had followership that has been determined to say, look, this is what we want. And then we've also had leadership that has said, look, for us to grow, for us to expand, for us to thrive, for us not to be defeated and be enslaved by conquerors, this is what we needed to do. We had that level of organization, and the empires were thriving. I mean, if today the British and Germans and Americans are returning looted artifacts from the Benin Kingdom back to Benin City, it required the organization of guilds to produce those artifacts, whether they were carvers or bronze casters, and so on and so forth. And from the guild system in the UK, that's how big companies that we know today arose. So what happened with that historical experience of ours, which was also embedded in our culture, that today in a democracy, we seem at sea, as it were, to find our bearing and get good governance?
Thank you, Mr. Kirian. I like your point because we have been actually talking about cosmetic issues rather than deferring to the real issue all along. Apart from what intervention from Prof, I think we've been deferring to cosmetic issues rather than the real issue. And we cannot run away from history. I like your intervention, Kirian, to point to a historical antecedent of the great empires that made the entity called Nigeria today. Because there are colonial historiography that tend to want to show that we are backward. Mary Celeste came to deliver us from mother of twins. Mungo Park discovered River Niger. All of this is to show that we are barbaric, we are uncivilized. But the historical antecedents show that we had great empires. We had women even leading. Queen Amina of Zozo led great empire. She built the empire of Zozo to what it was before then. And so the colonialists inherited a structure, a society that was advanced technologically. Even the artifacts show that we were technologically advanced as a part of human, as a part of the matrix of human civilization. So we are not backward. And leadership was what brought in this semblance of technological advancement. In fact, as at the point of colonial adventure, we were more advanced than many, many European countries, many, many European societies, technologically. And what brought to bear is leadership and the quality of leadership in our society. Now, fast forward to independence. Colonialism put in place a system of divide and rule. And don't forget, they hurriedly gave independence. They were not really willing to give independence. Independence was granted as a result of the North Atlantic Treaty arrangement and the Marshall Plan to revamp the war-torn Europe. So they granted America access to overseas territories, to plunder as well, like they have been plundering. And that was why they quickly granted independence. And they granted independence to leaders that they chose, that they determined. And that was why our leaders, as at independence, were busy trying to build their enclave rather than build in Nigeria. And the military destroyed the little value orientation imbibed by these leaders and intensified the process of corruption, ethical destruction, moral degradation of our society. The military authoritarian rule produced the set of political leaders that we have today. If you look at the governors between 1999 to 2003, majority of them were commissioners of finance or information under military administration, or they were senior special advisors to governors on finance and other matters. And so these are the set of people, leaders that we imbibe in a new democratic enterprise, a new democratic setting, but with values and orientation of dictatorial tendencies. So these are governors and rulers who were not in tune or attuned with democratic values. And democracy is about openness. And so these leaders don't like people who question them. And that was why you had OPC. That was why you had Egbesu boys, Bakassi boys, because the democratic platform opened up discussion. And so those leaders were supposed to harness those grievances and take it on board on a vision. Look, we have been trying to have vision 2020, vision 20 that. We have a visionless. We have leaders without vision, without direction. We have political elites who don't have vision, no mission. And that is why people will pay 100 million naira, 45 million naira to vie. Look at all the political leaders who are coming for presidency. How many of them are stable before you? Their vision for 5 years, for 4 years, where they want to take us from where we are today to, and give us roadmap, landmarks that we will use engaging them. And I don't want to delve on the issue of education because Prof, God bless you, she has teased out all the problem of education. Deliberately, our leaders under military rule and from now pauperize the majority of the people and taking us backward. However, they are going to pay for it because technology and the fourth industrial revolution will deal with a lot of this problem. We have good groups, youth groups like Code, Connected Development, like Yali. They will take government on. And that is why I worry when our leaders are saying that we should be thinking of Nigeria and be taking it to 1960. They don't know that they are finished. These leaders are gone. The leaders are out there. They are in Yali. They are in Connected Development. They are in Twitter. I have participated with youth on Twitter Space. I have listened to youth on Twitter and Space and Facebook Live. And I've listened to them on Instagram Live. They are discussing the future of Nigeria today. They are leaving you to be eulogizing in nostalgia, 1960 Constitution, 1963. They are already in 2050. These youth are in 2050. They will take over. And they have given you example in NSAS. They will do more. They have the capacity to lead. They are the ones to shape the future. The restructuring we should be talking about is how to give our youth the future of Nigeria
Professor,
by 2050.
Professor, is that, thank you so much. As a matter of fact, you addressed some very pertinent issues there with your submission. That is well taken. I recall that in 1999, not many men of integrity were interested in coming out to run for any elected position at that time. And that saw an upsurge of persons with questionable characters across the board, who vied for political position, and they got it. And from what he said, the same people are being recycled one way or another. Let me ask you this, Dr. Osamoje. What is left for us now as a nation? Now, 2023 election is just, by the corner. And we have a plethora of persons who want to run for the office of the president. What qualities and skills should Nigerians be looking out for, to determine who gets that shot?
It's difficult. Excuse me. It's difficult because, like I think it's Professor Shonaya that said, it's like there has been a deliberate plan to keep the people uneducated, so they will not understand their rights and be able to call leaders to question. What I think we should be doing, I think Dr. Ikuku alluded to it earlier, is to look for people with proof of performance. Wherever you are coming to, you want to be a governor, you want to be whatever you are, you must have performed somewhere. I mean, you couldn't have just been existing and not had any interaction or not had any, because leadership is not necessarily until you become president, you become governor. Were you in an office? Did you head a department? You may not even be the CEO, but if you headed a department, what was the proof of performance at that level? Because if you did not perform, then you shouldn't be given any higher responsibility. Now, the other thing we need to look at in deciding who we should elect is ethics. I mean, leadership has ethics. It has values. Now, a leader that comes and is not telling you the plan to improve the lot of the people going forward doesn't have the interest of the people at heart. That leader is only concerned, like we heard earlier, the perks of office. Because you should be able to say to me, you know what, this is the problem I see right now. This is how I plan to fix this problem. And after I fix this problem, this is how I plan to move us forward in the next 4 years, to be able to, so that 4 years down the road, we should be able to look at when you came in, when you left, did our lot get better? Or did it get worse? Or were we stagnated? Or did we even go backwards? Did we retrogress? Now, these are the things we should be looking at. But my worry, like I said earlier, my worry is, do the electorate have that capacity? Because when people have been made poor, they are going to be asking for the rice, they are going to be asking for the bag of salt. Whatever you give them, you are able to use that to influence them to vote, because let's be honest, they don't know more than that. So we need to, first of all, educate the people. I think that's very important. People need to be educated to look at specific qualifications of people they should be voting for.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Felix Osamoje. You talked about bag of salt, bag of rice. I've also seen in some posts on the social media, I think they're also doing chin-chin and bekere now, along with the regular stuff. But this is a very interesting conversation, and as you see, we're just gaining altitude on this topic. We have a second topic, in a sense, related to what we are dealing with now, but we'll have to continue this conversation most likely tomorrow. We'll sort that out, with our producers and directors, so that we have a clearer idea, because we have to drill further down into these issues. We are on the verge of the primaries of the political parties, and after the primaries, well, by law and the constitution, we are stuck with the candidates, and whoever emerges then takes charge of our country and our collective destiny. On that note, we'd like to appreciate all our guests who've been with us this morning. Dr. Sam Ikoku, productivity consultant and managing CEO of Nakachi Consulting. Dr. Ikoku, pleasure having you this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. Felix Osamoje, leadership and communication expert, is a senior lecturer in mass communication at Bingham University, Cairo, Nasarawa State.
Thank you.
Soji Eneade, Director General, Citizenship and Leadership Training Center, Jos, Plateau State. Delight having you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Via Zoom, Professor Oluremi Shonaya, of course, retired professor of French language and applied linguistics at Obafemi Awolowo University and former presidential candidate of Kowa Party in 2015. We also would like to appreciate Professor Mohammed Kabir Issa, who kept mistaking me for Kirian. My name is Kingsley. I'm sure you know that, Prof. Professor Issa is a professor of governance, Department of Local Government and Development Studies at Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Prof, great delight having you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with a related subject matter. That is to say, Becoming the President of Nigeria, A Citizen's Guide. It's a new book, and we'll discuss it briefly before we call it a day onto this edition of the program.
All right, you're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, just as we indicated earlier, we'll have a second conversation on the book entitled Becoming the President of Nigeria, A Citizen's Guide. And right here in the studio with us is the author of the book, Magnus Onyibe. Magnus Onyibe, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, please.
Yeah, Kieran, that's Magnus Onyibe, of course, is a former commissioner for information in Delta State. It's also a columnist, and of course, he comments on very critical national issues. So, this book is out, Becoming the President of Nigeria, A Citizen's Guide. Mm-hmm. In a sense, it just tends to remind me of what Peter Nahoro did in the 1960s, how to be a Nigerian.
Correct.
So, what are you talking about here in Becoming the President of Nigeria, A Citizen's Guide?
Okay, what I try to do in the book is to rekindle hope amongst Nigerians that anybody who's a bona fide citizen of Nigeria can become president of Nigeria, going by what's laid out in the Constitution. People were beginning to tend to think that you have to be an aristocrat, you have to have a lot of money, you have to be from some kind of monarchy, whatever, for you to be able to become president of Nigeria. No. Anybody can become president of Nigeria, and there are instances of the 5 people that have been presidents of Nigeria since 1960. Incidentally, 3 of them are school teachers, or were school teachers, from Shehu Shagari to Umaru Musa Yar'Adua to Goodluck Jonathan. The other 2 were soldiers from OBJ to the present president that we have. And if you remember, in those days, they used to say the reward for teachers is in heaven. It's not really so. It's here, if they're diligent. And people were beginning to feel that because votes didn't matter, or votes don't matter, we hope is to start being critical from 2023, that people that were anointed became president, and not people who actually were probably qualified, had the qualities and stuff like that. So the book is not just a how-to, actually, because a lot of people are expecting that it's like a manual, like when you buy a TV set, tells you how to set it up and whatever, So a lot of people have been scrambling for it for that reason. It's beyond that. It goes deeper, because it traces the origin of Nigeria from 1914 to the present time, and all the processes that we've gone through. In fact, the first chapter of the book is a 12-chapter book. The first chapter talks about trade as a unifying factor for Nigerians between the North and the East and the Southwest and all that and all that. And if you remember, the North of Nigeria was taking cattle to the South, and the South were taking sundry items, including kola nut. So kola nut is a unifying factor for Nigeria. The Yorubas grow it. The Hausas eat it the most. The Igbos talk about it the most. So the kola nut is a unifying factor, and it was part of the major trades that the Yorubas were trading to the North, while the North sold cattle, and the Easterners went to the north with trade like artisanship, selling of vehicle spare parts, pharmacies, masonry and stuff like that and whatever. So there were, reasons for us to relate to each other, but things took a wrong turn for one reason or the other not long ago.
Is the book actually reenacting, the historical perspective of Nigeria as a nation, or does it have information that ordinary Nigerian, could get, perhaps in the process of becoming a president? Is it a manual, so to speak, right? If it is not, of what benefit is this book going to be to the ordinary Nigerians?
It's a how-to book, as I said. It lays out everything that you need to become the president of Nigeria. For instance, in one piece, I said to become the president of Nigeria, be like MK Abiola. MK Abiola was a philanthropist. He didn't draw a line between Christianity and Islam. He owned football clubs. He was very popular. He was a pillar of sports. He reached out to everybody. You invited him anywhere, he was there to support you and do stuff like that and whatever. So he built up, although he didn't become the president of Nigeria, but we know what happened and we believe that he actually won because of the way he established himself and he moved along. It was the first time that we actually had a Muslim ticket and there was a president, because people got carried along by his activities, his actions and stuff like that and whatever. So that's part of what we're going to be discussing during the launch on Tuesday, 10 a.m. at Yaradua Center. There's going to be a side panel of gentlemen like you, one each from Yoruba land, from Hausa land, from Igbo land, and a moderator, plus a woman, because we're gender sensitive. They'll be discussing what Nigerians expect from the president of Nigeria come 2023. So they'll be setting the agenda so that when delegates go to nominate them for the primaries, they will know the qualities that they'll be looking for in those persons presenting themselves. I know there's a motley crowd of 40 people right now vying for it, but Nigerians will be able to at least have a say about what they expect the president to be.
Where is this launch? You said Tuesday. Which of the Tuesdays now?
Tuesday, tomorrow, 10 a.m. at Musa Yaradua Center in Abuja here.
Okay, let's again have some greater insight into the contents of the book. It's an interesting title. It says, Becoming the President of Nigeria. You mentioned the instance of MK Abiola, be a philanthropist. MK Abiola wasn't, at the time he ran for president, a poor man. He was a chartered accountant, and he was a wealthy Nigerian. At
Very
some
wealthy,
point, one of the wealthiest Africans, if not the wealthiest African available. But you also mentioned the countervailing point that we've had teachers who became president of Nigeria. Shehu Shagari, for instance, Umaru Yaradua, and then good luck Jonathan. What else? And what role did you identify? Some of the roles, either accidental leadership or fate or otherwise, that conduce to an individual emerging as president of Nigeria?
Yes, of course. In one of the chapters, I mentioned those who became president by accident, for instance. I also said, for you to become president of Nigeria, you have to be a household name. It's a popularity contest. As a matter of fact, I did mention, I cited examples in the United States of America where lots of the people who became president, including Trump, was because of popularity. I even mentioned where a wrestler became a governor. I even mentioned the issue of Ukraine, where Zelensky was a reality TV show person. So popularity matters, okay? And some people became, the Obasanjo, for instance, and the present president actually became household name because they were ex-heads of state, okay? Jonathan became president because he was vice president and his principal passed away. OBJ, of course, even became head of state because his principal passed away when he was next to him, and stuff like that. And
that's Murtala Mohammed.
Yes.
Well, but does that suggest that you can't just emerge from the blues and become president of Nigeria.
Absolutely not. Except you must work hard for it. You must work towards achieving it. Like I said, MK Abiola, when he was doing all the things he was doing, the philanthropy, owning a football club, and being all over the place, and being a smart person, erudite, he had content, it was easy for people to vote for him. I understand that he beat Tofa in Kano. Not these days that we play politics of ethnicity. He was popular enough to beat an indigene in the most popular town, because he was affable, he was open, he was reachable, he embraced everybody, Muslims, Christians, everything. So you have to work towards that to become president of Nigeria.
All right. The Abiola you're referencing, really, of course, as you rightly said, was a wealthy man, right? So he bulldozed his way through, utilizing his wealth positively, that earned him, the popularity and what have you. But not every Nigerian will have such privilege, right? So now, who are your target audience? Are you talking to the youth of this generation, or are you talking to the elites already who are, have positioned themselves, at the corridors of power?
I'm talking to everybody from the youths to the top. Like I said, if you notice, the space in politics has opened up. The electoral reforms have rekindled interest in Nigerians. They have become politically conscious. Everybody now is being told, from churches to mosques, to arm themselves with their PVCs and go and determine who the next person is. They should not wait for stomach infrastructure, and stuff like that. So everybody has become very aware and enlightened. This is a further enlightenment to Nigerians about what it takes to become president. So it's for both the youths and the people who are already there. As a matter of fact, a lot of them are looking for the book because they think it's a manual. A lot of people who are positioning for the presidency right now. As a matter of fact, we also invited all the presidential aspirants to this event that's taking place at Yaradua Center. And they're going to have the opportunity to say one or two things about what they planned for Nigeria, as you were discussing in the previous conversations. So people now don't tend to know what they are promising or what they want to do, because we're occupied with consensus, direct primaries, rotation, and stuff like that. So
people, and raising funds to
exactly, and raising funds. As you also pointed out, somebody also mentioned to me that, why are you saying these things are available for everybody when getting a nomination form is 100 million naira? A lot of people don't have access to 100 million naira, and in fact, 100 million naira is like a couple of years' salary to a president, whatever. So people, not many Nigerians can afford that kind of amount of money. So they're tending towards thinking that we're probably practicing aristocracy, whatever. But I said that's not the case. What has happened is that the reforms have now triggered interest by a lot of Nigerians in politics. And that's why so many people are coming out. And over time, the whole thing...
I just wonder, Magnus, just before we wrap this up very quickly, we're pressed for time, so your response should also be precise.
Yeah.
Does your book touch on the role of kingmakers or members of a cabal in the making of a president in Nigeria?
Absolutely. What delayed the book in coming out was I was waiting for the electoral reform bill to go through the whole thing and become an act. And you know that Section 8412 takes care of that there's no more godfather, whatever. People don't just come and choose. It's on record that there has to be a letter from the candidates who are consenting that somebody should be a consensus. So it's no more those days where you say this is anointed, this person can go, whatever. So the book details that.
All right, Magnus, thank you indeed. I hope that by tomorrow you make it clearer, to Nigerians on this issue of taking cognizance of cabal and kingmakers, which is a key factor, in the Nigerian polity. So tomorrow morning is the time, 10 a.m. tomorrow at the Yaradua Center. All right. Thank you indeed. That's the author of Becoming the President of Nigeria, a Citizen's Guide, Magnus Onyibe. We thank you for coming. We hope to be there tomorrow.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's how we call it a day on this particular edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for watching. We do hope to see you again tomorrow when we return with a fresh edition of your Good Morning Show. My name is Kirian Umayo. You have a great day.
And I'm Kingsley Osanala saying enjoy the rest of your day.